During the holidays, I returned to my hometown and found that the community where I had lived for more than 20 years had become a ruin. I took out my mobile phone and planned to ask my parents what was going on. Unexpectedly, I found that I was not only kicked out of the family group, but also my phone number was blocked. After a lot of effort, I finally contacted Aunt Lydia. When she saw me coming, her face was very ugly and she handed me a new household registration book. "Evelyn, your parents took Ethan abroad. They left you 20,000 yuan. You have to support yourself in the future." I realized that as soon as the family received the demolition compensation, they were afraid that I would come back to share the money, so they all ran away. Overnight, I became a lonely person, holding the 50 million winning check that had just been cashed in my hand, and fell into deep thought. The holidays are coming soon, and my roommates are busy planning travel routes. That I opened the drawer and saw the 50 million check inside. I was so excited that I felt like flying home. My family is not poor, but it is not rich either. My parents worked hard every day to support my brother and me in school. They were so tired that their hair turned white in their early 40s. They often said that they would be satisfied as long as they saw my brother and I have a promising future. Although my parents loved my brother more, they also took good care of me. So, after winning the lottery, I couldn't wait to tell them the good news. By the way, our family can also plan our future life well. However, when I returned to the gate of the community with my suitcase, I found that the familiar old buildings had become ruins. That I took out my mobile phone with trembling hands and wanted to call my mother to ask what was going on, but a cold voice prompt came from the other end of the phone. "The number you dialed is turned off." My mother Margaret has always been thoughtful and has never changed her mobile phone number, and it has never been turned off. So, I quickly called my father Richard and my brother Ethan. After hearing the shutdown prompt 3 times in a row, I suddenly realized that something really happened at home. To be honest, my neighborhood is not very lively, but I still remember the exact location of Aunt Lydia's house. Last year during the holidays, my parents were so busy that they asked me to send some local products to Aunt Lydia's house. However, Aunt Lydia threw the bag of mushrooms into the corner of the living room without even looking at it. She didn't seem to like my family very much. At that time, I had a strong self-esteem, so I didn't stay for dinner and went back to school directly. Later, during the winter vacation, I didn't go home, but worked in a milk tea shop. So I didn't go home for more than half a year, and I didn't know anything about my family. Now the situation of my family is unclear, and I am as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. That I didn't care about the previous unpleasantness, and I hurried to Aunt Lydia's house. The door opened a little, and Aunt Lydia poked her head out. When she saw it was me, her brows frowned. That I quickly asked, "Aunt Lydia, where are my parents? I didn't see anyone when I got home, and why was our community demolished?" Aunt Lydia glanced at me unhappily. "Wait." The door slammed shut, and after a few minutes, it opened again. She handed me a new household registration book and said, "Evelyn, your parents took Ethan abroad and left you 20,000 yuan. You have to take care of yourself in the future." Before I could ask anything else, the door closed again. From beginning to end, I was a little confused. That I came out of Aunt Lydia's house, dragging my suitcase, and felt that I was abandoned by the whole world. That I could only find a hotel near the community to stay, and accidentally heard the boss chatting with others. "The people in the neighborhood next door are so lucky. After this piece of land was bought by a rich man, every household lost 10 million yuan. When will I be able to end this hard life and become a demolition household?" Another person continued, "That piece of land has good feng shui and has been seen by a master. You don't have that kind of luck. You'd better work hard." Only then did I realize that the demolition money had been received. They were afraid that I would come back to share the money, so they all ran away. That I stayed in the hotel all night, but my head was still a mess. Over the years, I worked and studied at the same time, trying my best to help share the pressure at home. And Ethan, he was addicted to games all day long, and he did very badly in the college entrance examination. In the end, he could only spend money to go to a second-rate university. He did nothing at home, just lying down and waiting for food and drink, but I had to take care of all the laundry, cooking and cleaning at home. When it comes to filial piety and care, I don't know how many times better than him. Does it mean that I have to be treated like this just because I am not a boy? I was not convinced, so I found a private detective the next day that I never thought that one day I would use the tricks in TV dramas to deal with my parents. Life is sometimes more dramatic than TV dramas. The man who received me, Lucas, was dressed casually and looked unreliable. After looking at me, he smacked his lips and said, "My fee is not cheap." I was so angry at the time that I gritted my teeth and told him, "As long as I can find someone. I don't care how much it costs." I have to say that the person who paid a lot of money is really capable. Only 3 days later, he told me that the person was found. That I asked the counselor for a week's leave and immediately bought a plane ticket to Haining. Haining is a nationally renowned tourist destination. There are sunshine, beaches, and sea there. There are also my unscrupulous parents and ignorant younger brother. In a 5-star hotel. Lucas looked at me with a pile of documents in his hand, his eyes full of sympathy. "I finally understand why you spent so much money to find someone." My parents and younger brother, who told me that they had gone abroad, are actually still in China. They used the money from the demolition to buy a house in Haining, and deposited the rest of the money into Ethan's account. The family of 3 had a great time, and it seemed that they had forgotten that I was their daughter. That's right. In the eyes of my parents, I might just be a burden. They didn't mention it. But their most important thing was my younger brother. But I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I be so angry? So I went directly to the address Lucas gave me. Ding dong ding. As soon as the door opened, my mother Margaret was originally smiling, but when she saw me, her smile froze immediately. She asked in panic, "Evelyn, how did you find this place?" My mother, who gave birth to me after 10 months of pregnancy, said the first thing she said when she met me, not a greeting, not an apology, but a question. As soon as Margaret's surprised voice fell, my father Richard followed out. He was wearing a popular floral shirt and beach pants, and slippers on his feet, looking fashionable and comfortable. Until he saw me, the couple's identical expressions made me sneer. "Why, you left your daughter aside, but you are so comfortable." When people are angry, their words will naturally not be pleasant. I think I have been restrained enough that I didn't say anything more unpleasant, but my father Richard didn't think so. His face immediately sank after hearing it. "Evelyn, you are a college student after all. How do you talk to your parents?" I looked at him and answered word by word, "Parents. Are you qualified?" Before I could step into the house, I felt as excited as a holiday, and planned to give my family an unexpected surprise. I really didn't expect it to be like this. I wanted to give them a surprise, but I felt disgusted by their behavior, just like eating a bunch of flies. Through the half-open door, I saw Ethan lying lazily on the sofa playing games. "You moved overnight just for such a guy who didn't want to make progress. You've worked so hard." They said they were going abroad. If I hadn't investigated, I might have been kept in the dark for the rest of my life. Ethan had a hot temper and jumped up from the sofa immediately after hearing this. When he saw my angry expression, he suddenly laughed. "Evelyn, you always pretended to be noble in front of me and didn't wash my socks or cook for me. Now you've been abandoned. You deserve it." His frivolous smile made him look like a complete rogue. I was so angry that I slapped him in the face. "I am well-rounded and can live independently even if I leave home. Unlike you. You can't take care of yourself at the age of 20. Ethan was caught off guard and stunned. When he came to his senses, he threw his phone to the ground with a snap and wanted to rush over to hit me. What a pity. How could he, who only loves to lie on the sofa, beat me, who has practiced boxing for several years? In less than a minute, Ethan was subdued by me on the ground. After a few punches, he was out of breath. My parents felt sorry for their son and hurried forward to pull me away. My mother Margaret screamed and slapped me hard on the right cheek. "Evelyn, I want to sever the mother-daughter relationship with you. Ethan is enough. Can you please stop bothering us?" Her brows were furrowed, and her eyes were full of disgust for me. At that moment, I suddenly felt relieved. "Okay, you write an agreement to sever the relationship. After receiving the agreement, I will never come to you again in this life. In order to let me leave, the two of them quickly drafted an agreement and did not forget to press their fingerprints with ink. I took the agreement and took a closer look. The agreement was written in black and white. Margaret. Richard, sever the mother-daughter and father-daughter relationship with Evelyn from today on. Even if we live in different places in the future, she will not even come to the funeral. It was obvious that they did not want to even look at me, even at an occasion like a funeral. It was clearly stated that I was not welcome. However, I just didn't want to have anything to do with their family. That I returned to Jiangzhou with this agreement and the household registration book. And immediately changed my surname. My name was originally given by my grandmother. She wanted me to be happy all my life, so she named me Evelyn. Now, I decided to follow my grandmother's surname and change my name to Sophia. The past is like smoke and cannot be recalled. From now on, I can finally live for myself. The bank's processing speed is really fast. When I saw the number on the bank card, I suddenly had an idea. Some time ago, my girlfriends in the class made a small game. I tried it a few times and felt it was pretty good. I might as well take advantage of it now to invest in a small company and be my own boss. When I graduate next year, I won't have to go out to work. Who would be willing to work if they have money? So I bought an apartment in the center of Jiangzhou and planned to connect 2 rooms to make a bedroom. In the past, my so-called parents had 1 bedroom and Ethan had another bedroom. As for me, I could only live in a small compartment separated from the living room. Those things I didn't have before, I can now give myself. In my junior year, the courses became easier. The studio that a few of us friends made gradually took shape. Just then, the school held a debate competition. When I showed my speech on the big screen, I accidentally exposed the scanned version of the document that severed the relationship. Although I quickly turned off the screen, someone still took a photo and uploaded it to the video platform while I was busy looking for the initiator. Public opinion quickly heated up. The agreement broke through the information barrier and became the top social topic. The uploader of the video claimed that she was an abandoned daughter and wanted to ask for an explanation from her ruthless family. Her number of fans surged to 1 million in 2 days, and she started a live broadcast while the iron was hot. I looked at the person wearing a pig head mask in the live broadcast and felt helpless again. As the situation escalated, I had no choice but to call the police. The police uncle was amazingly efficient and quickly locked the video uploader. I originally thought it was a classmate in the class, but I didn't expect it to be my roommate Luna. When she was caught, she cried bitterly. She explained that she wanted to help me vent my anger at first, but as the attention increased, she couldn't resist the temptation and wanted to make money by live streaming while the popularity was high. I think she has given up her basic moral bottom line for popularity and money. We have lived in the same dormitory for 3 years and have always had the best relationship. I would share with her any good things, whether it is delicious snacks or beautiful dresses. The result was betrayal by a good friend. She watched me anxiously looking for the publisher of the video, while she was quietly making money behind the scenes. This is really disgusting. I didn't intend to be lenient with her. The school's punishment was to let her drop out. The counselor personally called Luna's mother. Soon, she brought Luna and her mother to the dormitory. As soon as I entered the dormitory, Luna's mother knelt in front of me without saying a word. I was frightened by this sudden scene and hurriedly reached out to help her, but she firmly blocked me. With a bitter smile on her face, she begged me again and again. "Miss, I beg you, please, I am a single mother. I did not educate my daughter well. Can you give her another chance? If she is really expelled from school, her life will be ruined." As she cried, Luna was pulled down to her knees by her mother. Although there was still a trace of reluctance in her eyes, she looked at her mother with regret. The counselor was a young man who had just worked for a few years. She wiped her eyes and began to persuade me. "Sophia, expulsion is really too severe for Luna. Can you give her a chance?" To be honest, witnessing all this with my own eyes, my heart was also shaken. It turns out that not all mothers will abandon their children. I looked at her gray hair, sighed, and helped her up. "Auntie, I promise you, but there won't be a next time. Using other people's pain to make money is not a long-term solution after all." I also hope that Luna can reflect on it and not make bigger mistakes in the future. After sending Luna and her mother away, I turned to the counselor and said, "Luna and I had such a conflict. We are not suitable to live in the same dormitory anymore. I want to change dormitories. The counselor interceded for Luna. I gave her this face, and she naturally would not object to my request. After changing to a new residence, I thought the storm would stop. Unexpectedly, those omnipotent netizens not only dug out the personal information of my experience, but also put my own privacy online. A large number of people flocked to my social media account to leave messages and speak up for me. What's more, they found the contact information of my experience and Ethan and sent insulting and complaining messages. 2 months after being blocked, I unexpectedly received a familiar call. Looking at the names constantly changing on the screen, I pressed the hang up button. The call didn't go through, so they started sending messages. Sophia, answer the phone. Sophia, why did you post those messages online? Do you want to force us into a corner? Sophia, you bad woman, wait and see, I will find someone to deal with you. Messages kept pouring in. And the phone screen never went off. I quickly glanced at the messages and turned the phone over. Finally, when the get out of class was over, I opened my phone and took a look. It was incredible. I was pulled into a group called Loving Family by Cousin Mia. The chat box showed that there were 999 unread messages that I knew without clicking on them that they were probably all accusations against me. My father Richard is an only child, and as for my mother Margaret, my grandmother has 3 children. These 3 children gave my grandmother 8 or 9 grandchildren. Cousin Mia sent me an apology emoji, with pain in her voice. Cousin, I'm sorry, my mother used my phone to add you to the group and didn't allow me to kick you out. While browsing the group messages, I replied to her, it's okay, I want to see what they want to do. Those who abandon their own daughters, do they still have the face? The most active people in the group are my mother Margaret and Aunt Lydia. The two of them talked back and forth. Starting with the story when I was 10 years old, and every sentence emphasized the love of my family for me. Why start from the age of 10? Because before that, I had always depended on my grandmother. They were only in their early 20s when they gave birth to me, young and energetic, and did not realize that raising a child is a difficult task. Why Mother Margaret sent me back to my hometown after I could barely eat complimentary food. Why grandmother was busy with farm work while taking care of my studies. She raised me up with great difficulty. But she did not enjoy the blessings she deserved. As for my parents, they seem to have matured overnight after Ethan was born. They raised Ethan by themselves until my grandmother passed away, and I was taken back to live with them. When I first lived with them, I felt very painful, but what could I do? I could only hold on. They always complained to me about the hard work and poor family conditions, and that I, as a sister, should be more sensible. As I grew up, I began to understand the difficulties of my parents and started working to earn money early. Even so, they were still not satisfied. Why Mother Margaret accused me of being unfilial in the group and cried about her hardships that I couldn't help but respond. You are also a woman, put yourself in their shoes. Can you forgive such parents? The demolition compensation of 10 million yuan is indeed a test of people's hearts, but when I had 50 million yuan, I never thought of taking it all for myself. After I fought back, Aunt Lydia spoke excitedly. Evelyn, our ancestors' rule is that the family property is passed down to the sons, not the daughters. Besides, didn't your parents give you 20,000 yuan? You are too greedy. Why do you always want things that don't belong to you? Aunt Lydia seems to have got some benefits from my mother Margaret, and now she is always pointing fingers at me. She used to look down on our family, but now she has changed her face. Hearing her old ideas again, I forwarded them to my 2 cousins. Listen, cousins, Aunt Lydia said that you will not have a share of the family property in the future. If she is in a good mood, she may give you 20,000 yuan, but if she is in a bad mood, you can't get a penny. Aunt Lydia has 3 children. The first 2 are girls. Finally, the 3rd child gave birth to a boy, and she boasted about how great her little son is all day long. In fact, her youngest son had a bad temper, poor academic performance, and was spoiled to the point of lawlessness, and the 2 cousins also complained about this. It would have been fine if she didn't mention it, but once she did, the 2 cousins immediately exploded. After a fierce argument, Aunt Lydia lost, seeing that there was no help. I was about to go back to the dormitory, and Uncle Henry jumped out to interrupt again. Evelyn. You are a person with higher education, why are you so vulgar? Uncle Henry was self-righteous, but in fact he barely finished junior high school that I sneered. You old man, you still have the nerve to call me vulgar. Have you forgotten that you peed in the hotel when you were drunk last year during the Chinese New Year? Because it was too embarrassing, no one in the room dared to go to the front desk to ask someone to deal with it. In the end, I went there and paid 300 yuan before the cleaning lady was willing to come to clean up this kind of vulgar person. It's okay to pretend at home, but he dares to come out and shout shamelessly. Sophia, you disrespectful guy, our family doesn't have descendants like you. As soon as Uncle Henry finished speaking, I realized that it was impossible to reason with these people. That if my family was rich, I would give them some, and they would definitely pounce on me like pugs. At the same time, I noticed that my mother Margaret kept talking. But Ethan and my father Richard didn't say a word. This is completely inconsistent with their personalities. So I immediately exited the group chat and clicked on Lucas' WeChat avatar. Are you there? Anytime, no bargaining. When dealing with savvy businessmen, money is often the most direct and effective means. When I asked Lucas to investigate something, a post suddenly appeared on the internet. The title of the post was particularly attractive. Unfilial daughter tried to seize the family property, made up lies to bully her parents online, and beat her own brother. Is this unforgivable? Because the previous incident had not happened for long, this post was quickly pushed to the hot search. There were also many internet celebrities who forwarded it. Needless to say, Ethan must have paid someone to do it. A blogger with more than 10 million fans also released a video. In the video, Ethan was pinned to the ground and beaten. My face was clearly visible in the surveillance video. In the information age, people usually don't delve into the truth behind the story. They only pay attention to what they want to see. So my reputation took a 180-degree turn. At school, everyone looked at me with contempt and suspicion. The counselor who was friendly to me before called my name many times in class and advised me to be kind as a child. After class, I was blocked in the toilet by Luna and her friends. She looked at me with a strange smile on her face. Sophia, you have come to this day. You forced my mother to kneel down. Now it's my turn to see you begging for mercy. When Luna's head was pressed into the pool by me, she suddenly realized that even if there were 10 of her, it would be difficult to match me. I am not the kind of weak woman who can only cry silently, but a fierce and ferocious man-eating plant. She begged me to let her go with tears in her eyes. I gently lifted her bangs and whispered in her ear, "Don't mess with me again, next time, you won't be so lucky." In the awe of the people around me, I left the school and returned home. My house had just been renovated, and before I had time to live in it for a day, the police came to my door. They held Luna's police report in their hands and said they would take me to the police station to assist in the investigation. Although I was full of doubts, I still followed them. When I arrived at the police station, I found that Luna's originally fair face was covered with bruises, and even a few teeth had fallen out. As soon as she saw me, she immediately hid under the table, acting like a victim. The policeman opposite looked at me with a frown while comforting Luna. She signaled her colleague to take me aside. I clearly heard Luna crying to the police officer, saying that I beat her up in the toilet. Before I could listen, the police officer who brought me in spoke. "Tell me, why did you beat someone up?" Me. At this time, I suddenly realized Luna must have someone behind her this time. Today in the toilet, it was clearly her and a few helpers who tried to force me to surrender, but failed. I just pressed her head under the faucet and flushed it. If she really did, her injuries would not be so minor, now. The police officer seemed to believe only Luna's one-sided statement and determined that I was a criminal. I looked down at the pen and paper in his hand and said loudly, "I want to hire a lawyer. You have to find an expert to deal with the expert's matter." So I called Lucas. He sounded like he was not fully awake, and he asked 3 times before he understood the situation. An hour later, we were staring at each other in the police station. I asked, "Where is the lawyer?" He touched his nose and rolled his eyes impatiently. "It's late at night, sister. You have to wait for the lawyer to go to work." I wanted to say that I have money, but when I saw Lucas yawning, I held back my words that if he took the opportunity to increase the price, I would lose a lot. That I sat back in the chair and planned to sit there all night. Lucas leaned over to ask the police for details, and before I came to my senses, I felt a sharp pain in my scalp. Someone suddenly pulled my head up, and I was facing the crazy face of Luna's mother. Her eyes were wide open, and she hit me with gritted teeth. "You bitch, bullying my daughter, I will beat you to death." Luna's mother usually moves goods in the supermarket, and her hand strength is not to be underestimated. That I didn't adjust my posture for a while and couldn't break free, but fortunately Lucas reacted quickly. He rushed over and pulled me out of Luna's mother's hands. I looked down and saw my hair scattered on the ground. This is the first time someone has been so cruel to me since I grew up. Luna's mother hugged Luna with a red face and thick neck, shouting that she would put me in jail for life. With someone's support, Luna's eyes flashed with a hint of pride. As if she was sure that I couldn't defend myself, I touched my painful scalp, immediately sat down on the ground, and cried to Lucas, "I want to have my injuries examined." The surveillance of the police station clearly recorded the whole process of Luna's mother attacking me. This time, I will never be soft-hearted again. According to the prescribed procedures, since Luna claimed that I bullied her, she should also go for an injury assessment. However, before I asked her, she had been avoiding this request. I looked at her with a hint of sarcasm and said, "Are you unsure? I didn't touch you at all this afternoon. If you call the police, you will have to go to jail." I didn't, I was just a little scared," Luna answered hesitantly, but was interrupted by her mother. Her mother said sternly, "Don't be afraid, Jingjing, let's go for an injury assessment, and Mom will not let you get hurt again." In Luna's mother's eyes, I became the most heinous person, but when we just arrived at the hospital gate, Luna began to hesitate. She tried to leave several times with excuses. And even the police officer in charge of the case began to doubt her. She couldn't hide anymore, so she had to bite the bullet and walk into the examination room. An hour later, the doctor came out with the examination report. She first looked at me, discussed with the doctor who examined me for a while, and finally gave her own conclusion. Luna's injuries were caused at the same time. I carefully compared the size of the marks. It seems that they were caused by the fists of several adult men. As for my injuries, they were all on the head. Not only was the scalp injured. The doctor also suspected that I had a concussion. After the doctor helped us deal with the wound, the police officer in charge of the case was also angry. She had been protecting Luna, but she didn't expect that there was another truth behind the incident. Because of dizziness, I stayed in the hospital ward. The next day, when Lucas came again, he was followed by two men in suits. I looked up and he smiled and said, "You are so lucky, girl. I found you the most famous lawyer in the industry. The most famous lawyer in the industry. To handle my small case. Isn't this making a mountain out of a molehill?" I covered my chest, feeling sorry for the high lawyer fees I was about to pay. The joining of elite lawyers made the case progress as fast as a rocket. The police started with the 200,000 yuan added to Luna's account and followed the clues to find the account where the money was transferred. Unexpectedly, the man was my younger brother, Ethan. It turned out that after Luna failed to bully me, she hooked up with Ethan online. The two hit it off and planned a perfect plan to frame me for the 200,000 yuan. Luna endured the beating from Ethan and others, and then reported to the police with injuries, falsely accusing me of bullying her. She thought I was alone and had no one to support me, so I would definitely not be able to explain myself. But since I called Lucas and her mother showed up and beat me, the development of the matter was beyond her expectations. Luna was still a student after all, and she told the whole story before the police questioned her. Then, she used that trick again, kneeling in front of me, crying and begging for my forgiveness. Her mother seemed unable to accept this reality and stood there blankly. I touched the bald spot on my head, and there was no more pity. "Don't dream, Luna, you pretended to be me to cheat money in school, and now you framed me for money. What qualifications do you have to ask me for forgiveness again?" This time, it's not just Luna, even her mother, a woman who hits without asking right or wrong, has to taste the taste of prison. I can understand her protective feelings for her daughter, but I am not Luna after all. And there is no reason to forgive someone who hurts me again that I don't have the protection of my parents, so I have to know how to love myself. Isn't it? Ethan was arrested, and my biased parents came to the hospital. My stepmother Margaret was holding a basket of fruits and asked me with a smile, "Xiaoqing, do you feel better?" I didn't say anything. She was bored. The smile on her face froze for a while, and then forced a smile. "You and Xiaomu are both my children. There is no deep hatred between you. Why don't you write a letter of forgiveness?" I looked at my full nails and said lightly, "Ethan didn't hit me. I can't write a letter of forgiveness, but you can write a letter of forgiveness to Luna and her mother." My mother Margaret was anxious, stepped forward and grabbed my hand, and forced a mango into my hand. "They said that as soon as you get the letter of forgiveness, you should write it to Ethan, so that no one will be punished." As soon as the mango was in my hand, a few small red spots appeared on my wrist. I quickly threw away the mango and looked at my mother Margaret. She still looked anxious. But she had to coax me patiently. Looking at her frustrated look, I couldn't help laughing. "Mom, do you know that I'm allergic to mangoes? I'm allergic to mangoes, and the one who loves mangoes the most is Ethan, whether it's intentional or unintentional. She always loves Ethan the most in her heart. Fortunately, I don't care about these things anymore." Being ridiculed by me, she blushed and hid behind my father Richard, seeing that my father Richard was about to start preaching again. I immediately pressed the nurse bell. I have to say that the service in the VIP ward is really thoughtful. They couldn't produce the documents proving that they were my relatives, so they were kicked out without a doubt. As for Luna's mother and daughter and Ethan, they asked for it to be prosecuted. Everyone has to be responsible for their own actions. No matter right or wrong, Ethan hired someone to beat Luna, which was quite cruel. And he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. My cousin Mia told me that my parents lost their reputation because of this incident. Their son had a criminal record, so they moved to another city. Ethan didn't learn well during the years he was in jail, but became addicted to gambling. He lost all the compensation for the demolition of his family in a few months, and he was still in debt. The creditors came to their door, but they couldn't pay, so they ran back to their hometown overnight. Later, they heard that my company was doing well, and they wanted to ask me for money again. Fortunately, cousin Mia learned her lesson this time. She talked to me in English, so others didn't know that we were still in contact. The family had no money, and Aunt Lydia and Uncle Henry became as cold as before. My parents came to our house several times but failed to borrow money, and they were chased by the creditors and had no way to deal with it. They used the same trick again and said that they would sever the father-son and mother-son relationship with Ethan. What a pity. The creditors are only responsible for asking for money, and they don't care whether you have severed the relationship. Ethan was chased by the creditors and fled everywhere. In the end, he had an accident and was hit by a car and became a vegetable. As for his compensation, it was all taken away by the creditors. The old couple who could have lived a peaceful life in peace ended up with a restless old age because they loved their son. They sold breakfast in their hometown, but the daily income was taken away by the creditors before they could even make it into their pockets. Days passed by, and I don't know if they had any regrets when they got up early and came home late, that they shouldn't have treated me like this. That I thought that if there is an afterlife, they should not favor boys over girls anymore, and if I have the opportunity to get married and become a parent in the future, I will definitely make my daughter the happiest person in the world. She came to this world to become a flower.